Our first story takes us to the Myrtles Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana. Built in 1796 by General David Bradford, this antebellum plantation is often referred to as one of America's most haunted homes. The plantation has a dark history, with at least 10 murders believed to have occurred on the property, though records suggest there may be more. The most famous spirit haunting the plantation is that of Chloe, a slave who allegedly served the family that lived there. According to legend, Chloe was caught eavesdropping on her master's private conversations and, as punishment, had her ear cut off. To hide the injury, Chloe began wearing a green turban, which has become her most recognizable feature. Seeking revenge, Chloe is said to have baked a cake poisoned with oleander leaves, intending to make the family sick and then nurse them back to health to regain their favor. However, the plan backfired when the poison killed 3 family members, including 2 children. Chloe was subsequently hanged by her fellow slaves and thrown into the Mississippi River. Since her death, Chloe's spirit has been reported countless times. Visitors to the plantation often see a woman in a green turban wandering the grounds or standing by the bed where the children died. There are also reports of ghostly children playing on the property, as well as mysterious handprints that appear on mirrors, only to vanish as soon as someone tries to clean them. The eerie atmosphere of the Myrtles Plantation makes it a magnet for ghost hunters and those curious about the paranormal. So, would you dare to visit? Next, we travel across the pond to Enfield, a quiet suburb in North London, England. In 1977, the Hodgson family began experiencing strange phenomena in their council house that would soon become one of the most well-documented poltergeist cases in history. It all started with small incidents: furniture moving by itself, unexplained knocking sounds, and toys being thrown across rooms. But things quickly escalated. The 2 daughters, Janet and Margaret, were particularly targeted by the entity. Janet was often found in a state of possession, speaking in a deep, guttural voice that she claimed wasn't her own. The voice identified itself as Bill, an old man who had died in the house years before. Several paranormal investigators, including Maurice Grosse and Guy Lyon Playfair, spent months documenting the events. They recorded audio of the mysterious voice, captured objects moving on their own, and even witnessed Janet levitating. The story became a media sensation, with photographers and reporters flocking to the house, some of whom also witnessed strange occurrences. Skeptics argue that the events were a hoax orchestrated by the children for attention, but those who were present maintain that something genuinely unexplainable happened in that house. The Enfield poltergeist case remains a topic of debate, but one thing is certain. Whatever happened in that modest home on Green Street was enough to leave a lasting mark on everyone involved. Would you have been brave enough to step inside? Our third story takes us to the rural community of Adams, Tennessee in the early 1800s. The Bell Witch haunting is one of the most famous and terrifying ghost stories in American history, and it all centers around the Bell family. John Bell was a farmer who, along with his family, began experiencing strange occurrences after they moved to their new home. It started with knocking sounds on the walls and mysterious creatures spotted on the property. But things quickly escalated when the family began hearing faint whispers and eventually the voice of a woman who would taunt and threaten them. This spirit, later known as the Bell Witch, seemed to have a personal vendetta against John Bell and his daughter Betsy. The entity would physically attack John, leaving him with bruises and welts, and it tormented Betsy to the point where she became ill. The witch's voice was said to be clear and distinct, often holding conversations with visitors and even singing hymns. The haunting attracted attention from all over, including from future President Andrew Jackson, who reportedly had his own encounter with the witch when he visited the Bell home. The torment continued for years, with the witch eventually declaring that she would kill John Bell. In 1820, John Bell died under mysterious circumstances, and many believe it was the witch who finally made good on her threat. Even after his death, the Bell Witch is said to have lingered, continuing to haunt the family for years to come. Today, the story of the Bell Witch is a staple of Southern folklore, and the land where the Bell Farm once stood is considered one of the most haunted places in America. Would you dare to visit the Bell Witch Cave, where the spirit is said to reside? Host: Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia is not just an old prison, it's a fortress of fear. Built in 1829, this massive prison was designed to isolate inmates in complete solitude. The harsh conditions and the innovative but cruel design made it a place of immense suffering. It's no surprise that many believe the tormented souls of former inmates still roam its dark corridors. One of the most famous ghosts said to haunt Eastern State is that of Al Capone, the notorious gangster. Capone was incarcerated here in the late 1920s, and according to reports, he was tormented by the ghost of one of his victims, James Clark, who was killed in the infamous St. Valentine's Day massacre. Capone was said to scream at night, begging for the ghost to leave him alone. But Capone isn't the only spirit said to reside here. Over the years, visitors and staff have reported hearing disembodied footsteps, whispers, and eerie laughter echoing through the cell blocks. Some have seen shadowy figures darting between cells, while others have felt an overwhelming sense of dread in certain parts of the prison, particularly in cell block 12, where the most violent and disturbed inmates were housed. Today, Eastern State Penitentiary is a museum, and every year it hosts a popular haunted house event. But even when the attractions are gone, the ghosts remain. Would you dare to explore this prison alone? Our next stop is 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York, a house that has become infamous as the site of the Amityville Horror. In November 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr. shot and killed 6 members of his family as they slept. A year later, the Lutz family moved into the house, and their experience became one of the most famous hauntings in history. The Lutz family claimed that soon after moving in, they began experiencing terrifying paranormal phenomena. George Lutz, the father, would wake up at 3:15 a.m. every night, the exact time of the murders. The family reported strange odors, slime oozing from the walls, and cold spots throughout the house. Even more disturbing were the apparitions they saw, including a demonic pig with glowing red eyes. The hauntings escalated quickly, with doors slamming on their own, furniture moving, and even physical attacks. At one point, Kathy Lutz claimed she was levitated out of her bed, while their young daughter, Missy, began talking to an invisible friend named Jody, the name she gave the demonic pig. After just 28 days, the Lutz family fled the house, leaving all their belongings behind. The story of the Amityville Horror became a cultural phenomenon, spawning books, movies, and endless speculation. While skeptics have argued that the events were exaggerated or even fabricated, the Lutz family maintained that what they experienced was real. The house has since been renovated, but the legend of the Amityville Horror lives on. Would you dare to spend a night in this house of horrors? The Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado is known for its stunning views and luxurious accommodations, but it's also famous for being one of the most haunted hotels in America. Built in 1909 by Freeland Oscar Stanley, the hotel gained its eerie reputation after horror author Stephen King stayed there in the 1970s, inspiring his novel The Shining. Guests and staff have reported a wide range of paranormal activities, from ghostly children playing in the hallways to mysterious piano music echoing through the lobby. The most famous ghost is that of F.O. Stanley himself, who has been seen in the hotel's billiard room and bar. Some guests have even reported seeing his wife Flora playing the piano in the ballroom. But it's not just the Stanleys who haunt the hotel. Room 217 is said to be particularly active. This was the room where King stayed, and it's also where a housekeeper named Elizabeth Wilson was injured in a gas explosion in 1911. Guests who stay in room 217 have reported items moving on their own, lights turning on and off, and the feeling of being watched. Some have even woken up to find their luggage unpacked or their shoes neatly lined up at the foot of the bed. The 4th floor of the hotel is also notorious for paranormal activity, with reports of children's laughter and the sound of footsteps running up and down the hallways. Some believe these are the spirits of children who stayed at the hotel when it was a popular family destination in the early 20th century. With its grand architecture and breathtaking location, the Stanley Hotel is a beautiful place to visit, but its haunted history might make you think twice before booking a room. Would you dare to stay in room 217? Anne Boleyn, one of England's most famous and tragic queens, was executed at the Tower of London in 1536. She was the second wife of King Henry VIII and the mother of Queen Elizabeth I. Accused of treason, adultery, and incest, Anne was found guilty and sentenced to death by beheading. But her story doesn't end there. The ghost of Anne Boleyn is said to haunt the Tower of London, where she spent her final days. Her spirit has been seen by numerous witnesses over the centuries, often near the site of her execution. She is sometimes seen carrying her severed head, her face frozen in an expression of sadness and betrayal. One of the most famous sightings occurred in 1864, when a guard reportedly fainted after encountering her ghost on a dark night. Anne's ghost has also been spotted at other locations associated with her life, including Hever Castle, her childhood home, and Blickling Hall, where she was born. At Blickling Hall, her apparition is said to arrive every year on the anniversary of her death, carried in a coach drawn by headless horses and driven by a headless coachman. The Tower of London is already a place filled with history and tragedy, but the presence of Anne Boleyn's ghost adds an extra layer of sorrow to its ancient walls. Whether she's seeking justice for her wrongful execution or simply unable to rest, Anne's spirit continues to capture the imagination of those who visit the tower. Would you dare to face the ghost of a queen? The Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California is unlike any other home you'll ever see. Built by Sarah Winchester, widow of the firearms magnate William Wirt Winchester, this sprawling mansion is a labyrinth of staircases that lead to nowhere, doors that open into walls, and hidden rooms. But there's a dark reason behind its bizarre architecture. After the death of her husband and infant daughter, Sarah Winchester was left grief-stricken and alone. She believed she was cursed by the spirits of those killed by the Winchester rifle, a weapon her husband's company had made famous. A medium told her that in order to appease the spirits, she needed to move west and build a home for them. But she could never stop building, or she would die. Sarah took the medium's advice to heart and began constructing what would become the Winchester Mystery House. For 38 years, she continued to build, with work on the house going on 24/7. The result is a massive, confusing mansion with 160 rooms, 47 stairways, and countless secret passages. The strange design was meant to confuse the spirits, preventing them from finding Sarah. But it seems some spirits may have gotten lost in the house anyway. Visitors and staff have reported seeing shadowy figures, hearing disembodied voices, and feeling cold spots in certain parts of the house. Some believe that Sarah herself haunts the mansion, continuing to oversee its construction from beyond the grave. The Winchester Mystery House is a place where the lines between the living and the dead are blurred, and where every corner could hold a ghostly surprise. Would you get lost in this house of spirits? The RMS Queen Mary, a retired British ocean liner that sailed primarily on the North Atlantic Ocean from 1936 to 1967, is now a hotel and tourist attraction docked in Long Beach, California. But it's not just the ship's grandeur that draws visitors. It's also one of the most haunted places in the world. During its time as a luxury liner, and later as a troop ship during World War II, the Queen Mary witnessed several tragic deaths. Today, it's believed that the spirits of those who died on board still linger. One of the most famous ghosts is that of a young sailor who was crushed to death by a door in the engine room. Visitors often report seeing his ghost, sometimes covered in grease, wandering the area where he met his untimely end. Another well-known spirit is that of a lady in white, who has been seen dancing in the ship's ballroom. This elegant apparition is believed to be the ghost of a first-class passenger who died on the ship during its glory days. The ship's pool area is also said to be haunted by the spirits of children, who can be heard laughing and splashing, even though the pool has long been drained. Guests staying on the ship often report strange occurrences, such as doors slamming shut on their own, faucets turning on by themselves, and the feeling of being watched. Some have even woken up to see a ghostly figure standing at the foot of their bed. The Queen Mary's haunted reputation has made it a popular destination for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts. But even if you're not a believer, there's no denying the eerie atmosphere of this grand old ship. Would you dare to spend the night on the haunted Queen Mary? Our final story brings us to a seemingly ordinary house on Brownsville Road in the Pittsburgh suburb of Brentwood, Pennsylvania. But behind its unassuming exterior lies a dark history of haunting and terror that has been documented in the book The Demon of Brownsville Road by Bob Cranmer, who lived in the house with his family. The Cranmer family moved into the house in the early 1990s, unaware of its sinister past. Shortly after moving in, they began to experience strange and frightening phenomena. It started with minor annoyances, lights flickering, strange noises, and objects being moved. But soon the disturbances became more aggressive. The family reported hearing guttural growls, seeing shadowy figures, and experiencing sudden drops in temperature. They would wake up with scratches and bruises that had no explanation. The entity seemed particularly focused on tormenting the Cranmer children, who would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, terrified by what they had seen. As the hauntings grew more intense, the family sought help from the Catholic Church, believing they were dealing with a demonic entity. After a series of exorcisms and blessings, the activity eventually subsided, but not before leaving the family traumatized. The story of the demon of Brownsville Road is a chilling reminder that sometimes evil can hide in the most unexpected places. The house still stands today, and while the hauntings have reportedly ceased, the scars of what happened there remain. Would you dare to live in a house with such a dark history? Phew, that was intense! I hope you enjoyed this journey through some of the scariest true ghost stories out there. Whether you believe in the paranormal or not, these tales are sure to send chills down your spine. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more spooky content, and leave a comment below telling me which story freaked you out the most. Until next time, sleep tight and don't let the ghosts bite.